In the demand pull model, the demand pull inflation, we have this Q and P, we have supply and demand. So we have demand being pulled up here. As you can see, what happens to prices. See an increase in quantity, and we see this increase in price here. So demand pull, just remember increase in demand. Whereas cost push inflation explains rising prices in terms of factors that raise per unit production costs at each level of spending. So if you guys remember what happens if costs increase, that means supply will decrease. If we have a decrease in supply, what does that do to prices? Increases them. So with cost push inflation, that means our change in supply causes inflation, whereas demand pull inflation, our change in demand causes a rise in the general rise in prices. There are complexities because we must know the source so we can measure the type of inflation and whether it's demand or supply moving. Whenever we have inflation, it has redistributional effects. It redistributes real income from some people to others. And this is because of our type of tax system that we have. When we look at nominal income, that's the number of dollars received as wages, rents, interest, or profits. So that's just normal, what you see on your paycheck. Our real income is a measurement of our nominal income, and then when we adjust it for inflation. So it's pretty much, once again, it's the same idea as taking nominal GDP and adjusting for a general change in prices to get real GDP. Instead, now we're just talking about nominal income and real income. So all we do is just to find our real income, we take nominal income and then divide it by the price index in hundreds. Anticipated inflation is an income receiver may be able to avoid or lessen the adverse effects of inflation on real income. This should be unanticipated inflation. And that's inflation whose full extent was not expected. The people mainly hurt from inflation are fixed income receivers, right? Because if we have inflation, that means we have a general increase in the price level. And if your income does not increase with inflation, then that means a dollar today is not worth as much as a dollar tomorrow, because that dollar tomorrow now cannot buy as many goods, because the prices of those goods have increased. People that just save their money, the level of inflation deteriorates the growth of their money, because say I have money in a savings account, if inflation is 2% and so the general level of prices is increasing by 2% per year, and my savings account is not making at least 2% interest per year, or is also not growing by 2%, then a dollar this year will be able to purchase more than a dollar next year. So if I'm just saving this money, then I won't be able to purchase as much of it when I need to take it out. For creditors, unanticipated inflation harms them. Creditors is another word for lenders, someone that lends someone money. Talk about who is unaffected or helped by inflation. Flexible income receivers. So for anyone who has their level of income that's staple to the level of inflation, then they should be unaffected. And debtors, so if you owe money to someone, inflation's good for you, because if you keep paying a stapled amount or a constant amount over time, the actual worth of that amount gets lower and lower, so it impacts you less and less on the whole. People that anticipate inflation, it's less severe for them because they've anticipated it. They can adjust their nominal incomes to reflect the expected price level rises. Sometimes we have an inflation premium. As you can see here, this inflation premium is when we raise the interest rate by the amount of the anticipated inflation. And then we have our real interest rate. That's the percentage increase in purchasing power that the borrower pays to the lender. Add those two together and we get our nominal interest rate. This is the percentage increase in money that the borrower pays the lender. So that includes the resulting from the built-in expectation of inflation, which is our inflation premium. So our expectation of inflation. Alright, so this is our addenda. Deflation is the effects of unanticipated deflation are the reverse of those of inflation. Mixed effects. A person who's an income earner, a holder of financial assets, and an owner of real assets simultaneously will bring a redistribution impact of inflation. Because as an income earner, as a holder of financial assets, and as an owner of real assets, the effect of inflation on each of those is going to be different. Thus, if they mix up all of those different areas, then they'll be affected in a mixed way. Last question, does inflation affect output? As you can see in the cost push inflation here, it does affect output. We have a decrease. Whereas, if we look at our first group, remember this is demand, pull inflation, we have an increase in output. So the last part is hyperinflation, and hyperinflation is just when we have an extraordinarily rapid inflation rate, and that can have a devastating impact on real output and employment. Because it'll have a devastating impact on anything real. If we have hyperinflation, the more inflation we have, the less value real anything has. Because it's that higher number that's dividing into the nominal.